The Shoemaker and the Elves. Once upon a time, in a quiet little town nestled between rolling green hills and sparkling streams, there lived a humble shoemaker named Henry. Henry's shop was small, with a wooden sign that squeaked in the wind, and a big window where he displayed his best shoes. Every morning, Henry would sit at his workbench, surrounded by scraps of leather, shiny buttons, and colourful threads, working hard to craft shoes for the townspeople. Though his hands were skilled and his heart full of kindness, business was slow, and Henry often worried about how he would pay for food and firewood. One chilly winter evening, after finishing his last pair of shoes, Henry realised he had just enough leather left for one more pair. He sighed, carefully cut out the shapes, and set them on his workbench, promising himself that he would sew them together in the morning. Henry blew out his candle, put on his warmest sweater, and went to bed, hoping for better luck tomorrow. As the moon rose high and the town grew silent, something magical began to stir. Tiny footsteps tiptoed across the floor, and faint giggles echoed in the darkness. From behind the curtains and under the shelves, 3 cheerful elves appeared. Their hats were bright as berries, their shoes twinkled like stars, and their eyes sparkled with mischief and kindness. The elves glanced at the pieces of leather, shared a secret smile, and got to work. With nimble fingers and magical tools, they stitched, hammered, and polished. Buttons flew through the air, laces danced, and in no time at all, the plain pieces of leather transformed into the most beautiful pair of shoes Henry had ever seen. They were soft as clouds, shining like morning dew, and decorated with tiny golden stars. As the first rays of sunlight peeked through the window, the elves vanished as quietly as they had arrived, leaving behind only their laughter and the dazzling shoes. When Henry awoke, he couldn't believe his eyes. He marvelled at the shoes, wondering who could have made them. He placed them in his shop window, and soon a wealthy customer spotted them and bought them for a handsome price. Henry was overjoyed, for now he could buy more leather and a bit of bread and cheese for supper. Night after night, Henry left new pieces of leather on his workbench. Each morning, he awoke to find wonderful new shoes, boots with rainbow laces, slippers with silver bells, sandals with flowers that never wilted. Word spread quickly through the town, and people travelled from far and wide to buy Henry's magical shoes. The little shop became the happiest place in town, filled with laughter, stories, and the comforting smell of fresh bread and leather. But Henry was curious. Who were his mysterious helpers? One snowy evening, he and his kind-hearted wife, Martha, decided to stay awake and hide behind a curtain. As the clock struck midnight, they watched in amazement as the elves appeared and began their joyful work. Henry and Martha's hearts filled with gratitude. They noticed, however, that the elves' clothes were worn and patched, and their shoes were thin and tattered. The next day, Henry and Martha worked together to make tiny jackets, warm hats, and the most delightful little shoes for their magical friends. That night, instead of leaving leather on the workbench, they left these gifts. When the elves arrived, they danced with joy, twirling in their new clothes and shoes. With a wave and a wink, the elves disappeared into the moonlight, leaving behind a trail of sparkling dust. From that day forward, Henry never saw the elves again, but his fortune continued to grow. He knew in his heart that kindness and gratitude bring their own magic, and every pair of shoes he made carried a little bit of that magic to everyone who wore them. And so, in the warm little shop on the corner, the story of the shoemaker and the elves was told for generations, reminding everyone that a helping hand and a grateful heart can turn the simplest life into the most extraordinary adventure.